Welcome to Landscaping Podcast, the world's best landscaping podcast, according to one particular website. My name is Joel Barnett, and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Les Edwards from ED Landscapes. Les runs a design and construction company based in Sydney and Mudgee as well. So he's got two crews operating there. And he's got a pretty cool story how he started out. So he gets into that pretty early, but basically he had a fella mowing his lawn, so he liked watching him, and then so he decided to follow in his footsteps and studied horticulture at Ryde TAFE, and then ended up working for him down the track. Now I love how he's got a fella on his team who he's starting to, I think he might be sharing part of the business with him, and he started with I think he's been there 10 or 12 years or a while anyway, but he started as an apprentice and now he's going to be working as an owner, if I understood correctly. And something else I liked that Les does is they've niched down into doing new homes. So there's a company in Melbourne that does that as well, but that's their bread and butter, doing new builds and designing and constructing, though they do their own designs with their in-house designer. So it seems like it's going pretty well for them. And the reason behind doing that came after communicating with Dan Herald about, how to get to where he is basically in business, because Les saw what he was doing and wanted to do the same. So I reached out to him, and he mentions how sharing the big names are in the industry with their knowledge, which is this podcast is a great example of that as well, because I've had some big names on here who have been really helpful. And something else that Les talked about was right at the start of the business, he was just taking on every job that came along, which is something that everyone seems to do when they first start out. So he realised that he wasn't doing the type of work he wanted to do, so he changed that up. So there's a couple of tips and tricks along the way in this chat with Les. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Les Edwards. And Les, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
I suppose the earliest part was we had a guy mowing our lawn who was my dad's cousin when I was like a little tacker, like 3, 4, 5. And every time he came, I'd just get out there and try and help him. Like I was probably the biggest nuisance in his way, but I think I'd really just started from there. And when I was about 14, I got my own mowing run. Mum used to drop me off and I'd go mow lawn and she'd pick me up. And then fast forward through school, finished school. And I got into landscape. I did Cert 3 hort at Ryde TAFE. But I didn't do an apprenticeship. I just did the course full time because I had this little side business that had built up to give me enough work while I studied the Cert 3. And then, so that took, I think, about 1.5 years. And I was just working for myself on the side, just doing little jobs and garden cleanups, nothing major, more maintenance stuff. And then from there, ended up going back and working for that guy that was mowing my lawn, like when I was a little kid. So he's like a relative, and he had a good landscaping business on the northern beaches. So when I finished TAFE, he took me on full time, and I stayed with him for about, I think, 6 or 7 years. And he just did sort of really nice, I suppose you'd call it what people call now high-end gardens on the northern beaches, but also a bit of commercial stuff. I think he had a few mates who were developers, and we did like a few unit blocks and things like that down in Monavale, that kind of area. So yeah, that was sort of my start, I suppose.
So was the horticulture tape, was that the horticulture course, was that real plant based, or was there landscape involved with that?
I think back then it was like Cert 3. Like I've got a Cert 3 in horticulture, but / landscape.
Yep, same.
So back then there was a heap more soils and plants and pest and diseases and turf management, which we did. I think there was a lot more plants, and there was still all the construction, but I think they've simplified it a bit, and sort of the construction guys are doing a lot more, or not as much soil work and pest and disease management, all that kind of stuff, from what I gather.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but probably gets the apprentices through quicker. But I think like just from seeing it, my guys struggle with things like drainage and soil and like garden preparation, so to speak, ready for planting, more so than like they're really good at construction. So that's where we've got to, make sure we're watching what's going on.
Yeah. So, it's just a different skill set. It's like learning something else other than what that is, which is a critically important thing for all gardens, really.
Yeah, that's it.
So the guy you're working for, what size crew did he have?
So he had about, on average, probably a team of 3 or 4. And we just did pretty much one job at a time. So I started at the bottom and just gradually worked my way to, I suppose, being his leading hand. But he was always sort of one of those guys that you had to do everything his way, which was kind of good, but it ultimately led to guys leaving because you didn't really have a free run at it. He never had any control. It was always his way, which, like, don't get me wrong, he had a bloody good way of doing it, and all his gardens were built really well, and he had really good plant knowledge. And I drive past stuff now on the northern beaches that I did as an apprentice, and it's pretty cool to see that it's all fully matured.
And so how long? So you're there for 6 or 7 years, and then is that when you went out and started your own thing?
Yeah, I think that was about 2006 or 7, and I just sort of like I was always going to start my own thing. Like I sort of had already done that at TAFE, and as a kid, like that was my, I suppose, I never had any other job. I think I worked at like a cafe or restaurant for like one shift, and then it was like, no, I can't do that, and just all I've ever done is landscaping. So got licensed, and then just went out on my own, started doing my own thing. I think initially, like, friends and family start to throw you a bit of work, and then I got through all of that, and then sort of got a bit quiet for a while and had to really work hard at trying to drum up work, and slowly did that and built a team, and that's sort of where it all started.
How did you drum up work to start with?
Initially, it was just all word of mouth, and then I don't think we advertised for a long time. And I suppose the best way to drum up work is to do a really good job and look after the client you're working with at that time, and then they just tell their friends, and you start going from job to job that way. So we did that, and then I think we did a bit of signage, like site signage, ute signage. I initially started with on my own, but then another mate from school came and joined, and there was 2 of us, and we did that for a bit. His brother was a graphic designer, so he came up with the ED brand, so to speak, which was sort of designed in a way to be like a stamp of approval, like that, with that little circular logo was sort of stamped on everything. But that got us through the early days, and then eventually we just butt heads and we ended up splitting up, and I took over the business.
And when did you put on did you have any employees when it was the 2 of you?
I think the 2 of us for a while, and I remember us working together. Like, we worked together so well. It was just like we didn't even have to talk. It was just everything just got done. But then we eventually got a first-year apprentice. He was with us it took a while to get the right one, but then we had a really good first year who finished and then ended up leaving and doing carpentry. And I think he's still doing carpentry now. And then our second apprentice is another guy, Tom, who's still with us now. And he's like, just about to sort of be part of the business now. So he's been with us for 12 years, and he's like the main guy that runs the construction side of things.
That's pretty satisfying to have that. Like, not just having an apprentice who finishes their apprenticeship, but staying on that long, and now he's coming into the business.
Yeah, and it's also like satisfying that he started like the day he finished his HSC, like, which is year 12 stuff in New South Wales. The next day he was working with us on one of our jobs, and again, like him, like, this is the only thing he's ever done. So that's really satisfying. He's bought a unit, set himself up, and that's all through working with us, which is pretty rewarding.
And so was that in the Northern Beaches you started off? Did you say?
Yeah, Northern Beaches. That's where I did my trade. I lived sort of Hornsby way, which area. So, but when we started, we just started anywhere. Like wherever we got work, we took it. So we were traveling we'd travel an hour and a half. Like we'd go up the coast, down the coast. It wouldn't matter. We just whatever we got, we took. That was the early days, and that was the real battle. Like we just never really found. Like it took a long time to find our right job, and it actually wasn't until I went to the Melbourne Garden Show. Actually, I think. Wow, when would it have been? I had a look, maybe 2011, I think it was, and Dean Herald did a job up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think, did you do one?
Yeah, we did. That was the first year we'd ever built one there, which was just one of the student garden competitions, like the boutique gardens. But yeah, I remember that Dean Herald one was phenomenal.
Yeah, I think from memory it had a pool, and like it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. And then like we came back from that, we did a bit of business coaching, and we sort of said, like the business coach was like, who do you admire in the industry? And I was like, oh, this Dean Herald bloke, I think he's probably the best. So he said, I'll send him an email and ask him, like, what's it take to be successful? So I did that. And one of the key things, and, to my surprise, Dean wrote back, not just 2 lines, but a big long email about, what we need to do basically. And one of the key things he said was just basically like find your niche, and landscaping is so broad, people just take on everything, which is what we were doing. But he's like, just narrow it down, find your niche and do it better than everyone else. And then around that time we did our first new home. So knock down, rebuild on the North Shore, and they clear the block, there's nothing left, and then we have to go in and do everything outside the eaves of the house. So they build a new house and we do everything outside. So we did our first one of that for this builder called Homestead, and we met the builder, and I thought we got on pretty well. And then we did what we could to make sure we looked after them, and we were really clean and tidy, really efficient. No handprints on the walls of the house, and, looking after their job as well as ours. And then, I think it was about after we finished that very first job, it was about 6 months, and we hadn't had another one. And I ran into that builder in Bunnings, and I sort of saw him in one of the aisles, and I was like, oh shit, there he is. I ran back to my ute and grabbed some cards, and then I hunted him down the aisles, like I was trying to find him again. And then went round the other way, and then walked down the aisle and sort of like accidentally ran into him, and just happened to have cards in my pocket. So I was like, here you go, like, remember us, keep us in mind. Sure enough, like a week later, he was ringing us saying, we've got this job for you. And the way that worked is we'd have to call the client and have a meeting and win the job on our own, but they would recommend us. And then that just built, that was the thing that changed our business from being just looking for everything, looking for work all the time, to just never having to look for work again. And we just did new home after new home. And I added up the other day when I'd spoken to you, and you were like, come on, I think we've done like 85 new homes since then. Like all at, a decent value. So, big thanks to Dean Herald. He's the one that really pushed me in that direction. He wouldn't even know that, but I've only had brief encounters with him. I've probably spoken to him 3 times over the years, and he probably wouldn't even remember who I am. But I just think those guys, those sort of guys that sort of started the industry in a way, like to where it is now, like the full building outside type thing. They're all, I've reached out to a few of them over the years, but they give you so much back when you do reach out to them. So I think that's probably one thing I've learned as well, is just to talk to all these guys in the industry, because I think you learn a lot from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as soon as you said you sent him a letter, I've only spoken to him on the podcast. I've never met him outside of that. But even just from that, he just seems like an awesome fella. So I assumed straight away that he would have written back a decent reply, because he just seems like that kind of guy.
It's something I printed out and I just sort of have in my office and I refer back to it every now and again. But yeah, it's pretty, it genuinely, that was the one thing that changed our business. More so than, like, we've done a fair bit of business coaching and all that, but it has its place. But I think learning from the guys that do it, and like that, your podcast as well, like it's a really good tool for people to hear all these little bits off everyone else. I think it's really important that we all sort of help each other out.
Yeah. Do you still do business coaching now?
No, I'm not at the moment. Like, I think we've had about 3 or 4 different people over the years. I think like I said, it has a place, but at the end of the day, you probably know all the answers. And I think you're probably better off investing in a really good accountant and time with your accountant more so than a business coach. Once you've got yourself sorted to a certain degree, like, I wouldn't take away from, I don't regret working with any of those coaches I did over the years, but yeah, starting out definitely, but even then, starting out, try and line up a beer with someone like Dean Harold, or anyone in the industry that you look up, that you sort of look up to. I think that will help you a lot more, and it's probably free.
Yeah,
cost of a beer might cost you $18 if you're in Sydney for a beer.
Yes. Yeah, and it's because it's good to find someone who, like you say, who's doing the work that you want to do, because the landscaping is so broad. So there might be someone who's a landscaper, but they don't do the plants or design, or and they do paving possibly.
Exactly. So. But even like, just referring back to Dean Harold again, like, I thought I wanted to be Dean Harold, and when we did this first new home, I was like, well, there's no way Dean Harold would do this, because they wouldn't be able to afford it. They'd be overcapitalizing on their house. So that worked really well for us, because we just found this little niche where we geared up, we got all the gear we needed. We have excavators, trucks, the right team. We're sort of moving a lot of material, putting a lot of material into these jobs, but it's not sort of what I call super high end. Like, you're not going to go and win awards for it, but it's about giving a lot for, it's about staying on budget, keeping to the budget, because people have invested a lot of money to knock down and rebuild a house, and they've only got a certain amount left, and there's no more. So we're at the end. We've really got to work hard to come in on that budget. So yeah, I think that was one of the things that appealed to me, that no one else in the landscaping industry coming through at that time was trying to win this sort of, I don't know, whatever you call it, but this niche of work that wasn't that glamorous. It wasn't what people see in magazines. It wasn't commercial, but it wasn't, little paving jobs in the backyard. It was like this in-between section that everyone just sort of glanced over and never really regarded as probably being a good little area to be in.
Yeah, and they're probably a bit more glamorous now. I'd imagine the new homes are getting, if they can afford to knock down and rebuild a house.
Yeah, I think. Well, the very first one we did might have been $60,000 for everything outside, and now probably the average job's, over 250 to 400, something like that.
Yeah, there's a company in Melbourne who only do new home builds as well.
All right, who's that?
I think they're Supreme Green.
Yeah.
I tried to get him on. He said he'd come on, but then hasn't been on yet. So
yeah,
we'll see. But he's been pretty cool.
Yeah, they definitely have gotten more involved over the years. As I think that builder that we follow a lot, that Homestead, like their jobs have gotten better. So we've had to go with them, and that whole market on the North Shore. Like, they used to sell them for a lot less than what they're selling for now. So the clients are putting a lot more into them. They're not as simple as they used to be.
So have you been designing from the start yourself, or?
No, like I actually finished my course, and then my hort landscape course and then thought, yeah, I want to get into design. I started it and just I didn't really have a great passion for it, and I was too busy just trying to work and earn money. So we ended up getting into contact with a designer who was designing a lot of jobs for other landscapers, and he used to do all our work, and that was great. But then we got to a point where he said, like, I don't want to just do your work. Like, I need to do other people's work as well. And we started to get too many jobs for him. So he said, you know, go out and get someone full time. And we did. We met up with Ali, our designer, who now, and she does all our designs. I like to get pretty involved, but not so much from a design element, but more a costing element, because our designs are pretty crucial. Like I said before, like they've got to come in on the client's budget. So we'll have like an initial meeting and then deliver from that a preliminary plan, which I'll cost, and then we revise it from there, rather than giving him something for designing to 500, but they only want to spend 250. So that's a big part of our design quote process.
So do you go out to the appointment with Ali to meet the client?
Yeah, like I'll always meet them like the first time, and then from there she might have another few meetings with them, like going over the plan. But yeah, like it just depends where we are and what's going on, and if it's more construction based or more design based, Ali will go if it's more design, and if the questions from the, you know, that they want to know about retaining walls and heights and levels, then I'll probably go.
Yep.
Yeah, but we do go a bit together, especially at the start.
Yeah, and that's the challenging thing for her, to design something to a budget if she hasn't got a construction background. So that's when you can sort of work together to work to keep the client happy.
Yeah, so every preliminary she gives us, you know, she gets a quote as well, and she's sort of seeing what they cost. But yeah, I think especially in our little niche, like it's really important, that cost thing. I think that's what's helped us a lot for a long time. Like our quote was our quote, and then that was the final price no matter what. People just kept changing things too much, so we had to do variations. But you know, especially early on, we just, whatever it was, even if they did change it, we still kept the same price, which was probably not a smart thing to do. But yeah, now people change their mind all the time. That's what we're finding. Through these construction jobs, the design that you sign up a year ago is completely different by the time we finish the job, you know, a year later.
Yep.
And then often you get a bit of pushback saying, oh, why has the price changed? But it's like, well, you know, everything's been presented to you up front. We've told you how much it's going to be, all the changes, and they just keep making them. They keep adding up, but they don't seem to keep adding those numbers up in their own head often. So, yeah.
So what sort of business size do you have at the moment in terms of staff?
I suppose COVID's changed us a lot. We've got, I think, like 6 guys on the ground in Sydney, but now they're all tradesmen. You know, we'd often get a new apprentice every year, but we haven't been able to get a new apprentice for 4 years. So the last 2 that came through are now finished, and they're still working with us. We probably could handle, you know, more like 10. Well, ideally, like 3 teams of 3 would be good, but we're sort of running 2 teams of 2 to 3. But that's sort of forcing us to change our model a little bit. We used to be very reliant on having apprentices, pushing barrows and moving materials, and now we're sort of moving towards trying to keep all the guys we've got. They're all qualified now, and they want to stay, and trying to change the business slightly to keep them all, but then probably subcontract more out and use better equipment, like more track dumpers, you know, blow in soil, like be more efficient in the way we do things, to try not to get as many guys back on the ground. Like, I don't know if we necessarily need more guys. I just think we need to be smarter in the way we do things.
Yep.
Like I watch a lot of stuff overseas trying to see how the Americans do it, and they lay a lot. We do a lot of tiling, concreting tiling, gluing, all that kind of stuff. But they're doing everything on aggregates, and it seems to be a lot easier and a lot quicker. And they're laying pavers with excavators and all sorts of things, which I'm trying to work a bit of that into our design. Yeah, like last year we had an issue with rendering. We couldn't get renderers. So a lot of our jobs coming through now are like maybe face brick piers or stone cladding, or just because I don't know if anyone knows where the renderers are, let us know. But that was a big issue for us. So yeah.
And you got so you're based in Mudgee as well. Do you do work there?
Yeah, we I've always wanted to live in the country. We moved here probably two and a half years ago. And yeah, so we just started a small team here. There's a big demand here for, as I said, trades before, and especially landscapers. When we moved here, there was only us doing the construction side of things. Now there's another guy, but like he's flat out, we're flat out. We only do a little bit. There's only a team of 3. We try and do one job at a time. Just find our niche up here as well, So that's only early days, and probably only 10-15% of our business is the Mudgee side of things.
Yep.
So the rest is Sydney, but I'm sort of a bit more remote in the management of it.
So do you plan on what are your goals for the 2 sides of the business? Obviously, you want to get more apprentices and grow the Sydney side, but is Mudgee just going to stay as it is?
Yeah, I think I've always said, like to the guys that are coming through, like I want to try and create ED to be a place they can all stay and have their own little section. So now we're bringing Tom into the whole business really, but I think there's opportunity for the guys to come through, and like one guy might take the Mudgee section, one guy might take the Sydney section. There's opportunity for Ali to take over design and run that, and so yeah, I think that's where we're going with it. I'm trying to keep everyone, but to do that, they've got to take a piece of it and take some risk. I think that's what we're trying to do. As opposed to my boss, way back when I was working for him, he never gave anyone any real, not control, that's the wrong word, but
I think you said freedom before.
Yeah, freedom and responsibility. I think that's what the guys want. They want some responsibility. And like, if it's 2:00 and, you got to go to the dentist and, like feel like you're your own boss, like you can only get to the doctor at 2, well, just go at 2. It's fine. Don't just hang around watching your clock till, 3:30 and quickly go at 4. Like just like I'm trying to create that. So Tom, my main guy, definitely, I don't even know what he's doing half the time, but nor do I want to know. He just gets it done. And as long as it's done right, I'm happy. As long as the client's happy, I'm happy. So that's sort of how I think I've done things.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it, because if you're standing there watching every movie does, you might say, I wouldn't do it that way. No, I wouldn't do it like that. But he's getting.
They might listen to this and go, oh yeah, sure, mate. Like you're watching us like a hawk, but I think I give them a fair bit of responsibility. And then when they get it wrong, they hear about it. But yeah.
You do any maintenance at all?
Oh, that's a long story. I actually love maintenance, like, because that's sort of how I started.
Yeah.
I find it really enjoyable, especially at the end of the week, like on a Friday. That's how my old boss used to do it. Every second Friday we'd do maintenance, and you put the Dunlop volleys on and cruise around, and it was just, you weren't in the mud, you'd have a good time. And I tried to do that for years. Like we've had maintenance 3 or 4 times and given it away 3 or 4 times. And if I had to listen to back, Dean Herald actually told me once, it's not worth it. Just do your construction and do it really well. It's one thing I didn't listen to him. I should have, and we've probably lost a lot of money trying to do it. So now we don't do it in Sydney, but we do a couple of jobs in Mudgee.
Have you got people you recommend when you finish?
Yeah. Well, one of the guys that was doing our maintenance sort of left, came back again, started doing it again, then left again. But he's actually, so he sort of mucked us around a bit, but I put that down to him just being young and not really knowing what he wants. But he's actually probably the best young guy on the North Shore doing maintenance. So, we'd be mad not to recommend him, which we do now. So he does a really good job, and he's super keen, young, really passionate about it. I think he'll do well. And again, he's just going to prioritize maintenance. I don't think you can do both. You can't do both really well.
No, you've definitely got to have people who are specialists in that role.
Yeah, and there's a few guys down there in Sydney that do it well. I think Matt at Reflective Gardens does it well. He's got a few guys. Fifth Seasons do it well. But yeah, it's definitely, you got to know what you're doing, I think.
Yeah, there's plenty of people who mow lawns, and so they do garden maintenance as well. But
yeah,
it doesn't mean they know anything about plants.
That's it.
So you mentioned you're starting to use a few more subcontractors in the Sydney side of things. What sort of subcontractors are you using? Is it like pavers, or who are you getting in?
Yeah, I mean, initially when we only had a couple of new homes a year, we'd do most of it ourselves. But as we've gotten more and more, and I think I said to you before, we've got about 25 new homes to do this year. We can't do it all with 6 guys. So we've definitely, bricklayers, block layers, tilers, renderers, painters, fencers, carpenters, plumbers. They're all the guys we use regularly. We have a guy that does our concrete driveways, but probably the other biggest area is like footings and concrete slabs, like 2 pave on or 2 tile. So that's one of the areas our boys are doing a lot of our work's engineered, pretty much all of it. So they're doing all the steel work for the footings and forming up. And I think that's what we're really trying to find now, is a good concreter that's happy to do that. It's pretty, as a concreter, it's probably not the best work. So trying to find someone to do your footings and your underpaved slabs is proving a bit difficult. But if we can, it'll save us a lot of time. Our boys can concentrate on the other stuff.
And are you designing all those new homes as well?
Yeah. Ali's job is to design them all and get them all approved, and get all the engineering and certification for them.
Yeah, right.
So that's pretty full on.
Yeah. So she organises building permits as well?
Yeah, all that. Yeah. And that's like one of the things that we get pulled up a bit on is like people say on these new homes that and even the builders said it to us, your price is getting up there in terms of like comparisons to other landscapers pricing the same job maybe. And maybe on a 250 grand job, they might get another quote for 150 and we're 100 grand over. But they don't have engineering, they don't have approvals, no certifier, no CDC, no home warranty. And there's still plenty of guys out there doing that. And that's the reason they're, 100 grand cheaper. So it's a struggle. It really frustrates me why we're still dealing with that stuff, but we are constantly having that conversation with clients saying, I can get it done for 100 grand less. Why should I use you? I'm like, well, I'm at the point now where I'm like, you know what? Don't. If you're going to just go use them. But it's pretty interesting now. It's been going on for a few years, and you drive past a few of our jobs, and then you drive past a few new homes that were done by one particular person on the North Shore that I know isn't licensed, and it's amazing the difference. Like it's plants not growing, and it's pretty funny to see. But
a lot of times you get what you pay for. So
yeah, definitely.
You can get the landscaping done for 100 grand less, but it's not going to look as good or last as long.
That's right. Yeah.
So do you ever do any projects that other people have designed, or do you get asked to do them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like previously we would, and I just found that, we'd get a plan across the desk by another designer for another builder. And I just found we were just a price check. You know, we never won them, even if we were comparable. In particularly last year, we came up against another good landscaper who does new homes, and it was a different designer, the designer that he works for, mostly. And you know, I was just a bit naive and priced the job, and I ended up speaking to him afterwards and found out we were within, like, you know, on a 200 grand job, we were within $1,000. Like, it was ridiculous how close we were. But obviously they were always going with him. And I think clients might do it one to get a price check, which is fine. But in that situation now, we charge for them. So if I feel like I've got some time and another designer's plan comes across the desk, I'll just say, oh yeah, it's $800 for me to price it.
Right.
And often they won't do it, but a couple of times they have. And, you know, it might take me half a day or a day, but, you know, that's fine. At least we're getting paid for our time. Yeah, so I think often we're just a price check if you're getting another designer. So yeah, I've pretty much stopped doing it.
Yep. What's your 5-year plan look like? Do you have one that you work toward, like that you sit down and actually write out?
Yeah, I'm pretty, like, I suppose we've got a long-term vision, and breaking it up into little 5-year plans is not really what I do. I tend to change my mind all the time. So that 5-year plan just gets changed every year. I just think that's the way I work. I've always just taken opportunities as they've come up, and it's just led me in all different directions. But in terms of my plan, it's just like, I love the industry. I love landscaping. It's all I'll ever do. And I just want to do, you know, definitely new homes. That's our thing. And I just want to keep getting better at doing new homes for people. So I want to build Mudgee side, but also bring Tom, our main guy in Sydney, into the Sydney side of things, and into the overall business, and make that successful, because we've had a business partner before and it didn't work. So I suppose my biggest plan would be to make sure that that's successful, and eventually that's the way I see how I can get out of it, is if Tom takes more of the business over time, and I sort of fall away as I don't need as much from it, and then leave it to him, and then hopefully he does the same, you know, with the next guys. So it's always there, and I'm hopefully always involved, and one day maybe I'm just sort of being a bit of a mentor to those guys. So that's probably the dream anyway.
Yep. You mentioned before the importance of having a good accountant that you work with. So do you do that now instead of having a business coach?
Yeah. So we got not stitched up, but I really feel like our last accountant really let us down for years. Like, we just didn't understand things we really needed to. And just recently we've got in with a new guy down at Albury, and he's amazing. Like, it's unbelievable. So he sort of offers that full round service, not just accounting, but, you know, a bit more, I wouldn't call it business coaching, but he's definitely changing the way we're doing things. And he's more focused on the numbers, you know, as opposed to like the delivery and writing processes and procedures, and, you know, preparing project folders, all that stuff that people get, I think, lost in. At the end of the day, it's all about the numbers, and it's all about making sure the client's happy. That's it. There's not much else to it. And looking after your staff. I think they're probably the 3 key things. Look after your clients, look after your staff, and look after the back end. And I think if you do that well, then you should go all right.
Have you got any apps that you use to keep track of the jobs?
Yeah, we're really struggling with that, though. We've sort of grown out of, we use Tradeify. I don't know if you've heard of that, but we quote and track our jobs through Tradeify. But I don't think it's really suited to our business where it is now. And apart from that, yeah, we've tried Build-A-Trend, Buildsoft, like the building ones. But yeah, we're still searching for the right one, because it doesn't do the client management side of things. So I know Ali now, our designer, is using Monday a lot, to track everything, where they all are, and that alerts me what I've got to quote and different stages of the job. So Monday and Traderfy are probably the two biggest things we're using. Yeah. Do you use something for project management or?
Just Trello, but not really. Like we don't use it a lot, but that's just the basic one where you can have, like you can put a checklist on there of things you've got to get done, and then anyone can access that and tick it off. You can add the design on there and the engineering, the quote, details about the client, so you can put all sorts of good stuff on there. And it doesn't cost anything, so it's good value.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, because we're only a 3-man crew, so we don't need to be too crazy, and I'm there all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But
I think that's the next stage of things though for us is, I suppose, younger guys coming through are going to really embrace the technology, that technological side of business, and I feel we've got to sort of catch up a bit, or we'll be left behind, because I think our business side of things is really clunky. Like there's a lot of handling of things that could be simplified with a better system. But yeah, like I said, we're just yet to find it. I don't think it's there for landscapers.
I reckon if I was gonna pick one, I would say it's Synced Up would be the best looking one. The only downside to that is they only work with QuickBooks.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And most, because they're American based, so QuickBooks is a lot bigger in America, but everyone in Australia seems to use Xero or MyOb.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think it might be $400 a month, maybe. So it's not cheap, but it basically does everything that, like, so a lot of people have got multiple apps they use, and it seems to do everything. So you only need this one app.
Yep.
But yeah,
I think trying to like work towards like saving time in the office and like turning quotes around a lot quicker, or with a better system would definitely help, I think, every business. The more we're out there out building gardens, the better it is for everyone.
Yeah. Last question for you, Les. Who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Yeah, I thought about this one every time I've listened to a podcast. I've eagerly awaited the answers. I think there's a guy in Sydney called Matt Glascott who has a really big sort of civil company, Glascott Landscapes and Civil, and I think he'd be a really good person to talk to. More experienced in the industry, and I think one of those industry leaders that is really, really sort of good with sharing his knowledge, and I think he'd be a really good chat. And I think I said to you before as well, Jack and Phil from Fifth Seasons would be good, I reckon, down in Sydney. And I'm not sure if you've spoken to Matt Lacey from Land Art.
No, I haven't yet.
That he'd also be good, or anyone from. There's a few directors of Land Art, and they've done that. No, that business has like really grown over the years since I've been around, and they do a really nice job too. So
yeah, some good recommendations.
There's 3, but I'd really love to hear Matt Glascott on there for sure.
All right, I'll hit him up, and if he doesn't get back to me, I'll get you to hand him down. Yeah,
if you struggle, I'll send you his number.
All right, awesome. Well, Les, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your story. Absolutely loved it. So thanks so much.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Good on you.